Yes, Abhishek, you can go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abhishek and I lead CySecK's academic programs that focus on skilling and promoting research. We would like to welcome all of you to today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. Before we begin, there are a few ground rules. All the attendees to the webinar will be on mute until the completion of the talk from the speaker. We will have a Q&A at the end of the talk. You can either type your question in the chat window or do a raise of hands, in which case we will unmute you. So this is the 46th webinar in the Samgachadvam series, and this is focusing on network security. We had to pause this webinar series due to certain circumstances, but will now aim to be regular with this series of webinars. Earlier this year, the government of Karnataka took an exciting step by providing cybersecurity as a specialization option for the diploma students. And we at CySecK helped draft the syllabus for this course. For the next 2 months, we will focus on covering various topics in the syllabus. Whilst we are sure that this will be of assistance to the students who have opted for this specialization, we are nevertheless confident that it will help other students or working professionals who are interested in cybersecurity as well. Cybersecurity is not just a critical domain, but is also a complex topic. We will aim to provide an overview to each of these domains with opportunities for conducting hands-on activities and with some pre or post read to help you to go into further depth. We hope this will kindle your interest to explore further. So coming to the topic of today's webinar, it's Network Security Part 2, and this is the second in the series of webinars on network security, which would cover the topics of using Suricata to analyze packet captures, practical packet analysis, and security monitoring and analysis laboratory. In the previous webinar, we had focused on packet analysis, and our speaker for this series, Mr. Swapneel Patnekar, will take it further from there. Before we proceed further, we would like to request all the attendees to please create an account on the APNIC Academy website. I will just paste the link to this in the chat. So it's https academy.apnic.net. I'd request you to please create an account here if you have already not done so, and preferably using a Gmail ID. This is mandatorily required to ensure active participation and proper understanding of the concepts that Mr. Patnekar would be speaking about. If you have not yet registered, please take a moment to do so now. And once you have registered on the APNIC website, please ensure that you join or rejoin the session with the same email address with which you have registered on the APNIC Academy website. Today is Thursday, and on the coming Monday, at the same time, we will have the final third part of this webinar series, and we will issue a communication by tomorrow for registration for the same. You can access the previous webinars on the CySecK website as well as on our YouTube channel. I request all of you to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. It will help you to get to know when new recordings are out, and it will also help us in getting better traction and visibility for our initiatives in research and skill building. So this is the scheme of webinar and assessment. I have already repeated the first instruction to please register on the APNIC Academy website. This is applicable for all the three webinars, number 45 to 46 and 47. So today we are at webinar number 46, and we will intimate the details on assessment for this webinar series a little later. It is now time for me to introduce our speaker for this webinar series. He is Mr. Swapneel Patnekar. He is Chief Network Security Engineer and Chief Executive Officer, Shreshta IT, Belagavi. He has worked in the area of information security for over a decade and a half. He is an APNIC community trainer and has delivered workshops in Myanmar, Papua New Guinea, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka on information security, network security, and DNS SEC. He is also a member of the Forum of Incident Response and Security Teams, or First DNS Abuse SIG. Swapneel has delivered several technical workshops to law enforcement agencies on the issue of countering cybercrime. He is a prolific speaker, and most recently, he presented at numerous international security and privacy conferences such as the BTNOG 9, SDNS 2021, SANOG 37, B-Sides Dayton, 2021 Virtual Symposium for Latin America and the Caribbean, APNIC 50, UKNOF July, APNIC NFH SEA, LKNOG 3, and so on. Apart from his day job, Swapneel spends time reporting abuse like malicious domain names in the DNS namespace to the stakeholders. Swapneel, it's a pleasure to have you with us. Could you please turn on your camera and share your slides? Yeah, Swapneel, can you hear us?
Sir, can you hear me, Swapnil sir?
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes,
You're
you are
audible now,
audible.
Swapneel.
Great. I believe some issue with the
We are just trying to bring in Swapneel as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Yes, Swapneel, can you unmute yourself now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, Swapneel, we can hear you.
Great.
Maybe you can come a little closer to your mic.
How about now?
Yeah, it's slightly better. Yeah.
Yeah. So apologies for the logistic issues at the last minute. This is the trouble with doing any sort of sessions or workshops remotely. But anyways, so I think as I was saying, thank you for the introduction. I'm not sure if that was something that was audible when I mentioned this earlier. If you're hearing it again, my apologies. But thank you to Abhishek for the introduction. And before we sort of move into the hands-on stuff, which is pretty much going to be something that you'll do at your end, at your own pace, and that's the whole objective of the kind of sessions that I do. The topic that we will look into today is going to be, Surikata, which is basically an intrusion detection system. It's an open source software. It's an open source uh, piece of software which anyone can download and install it on their systems. So you can even do that aside from the lab, which we will talk about in terms of using the APNIX Academy, which we also used in the first session. We will also look at using that lab, but that lab is sort of limited in the context of when you want to play around and look at doing things or looking at the configuration and various parameters. There is a limitation to the lab which is on the Academy platform. So I would also urge you to explore in installing Surikata. So you can probably do it inside a virtual machine environment. So you can install VirtualBox. Inside VirtualBox, you can install Linux, and then you can install Surikata inside it, because that will give you a lot of practical exposure. Because the point is, objective is also to look at breaking things, right? The mindset is not just a linear way of configuring things. It is also exploring and trying to understand how it works and what happens when you try out things, right? So it's very important to do that as well. And it's something that's more underappreciated or not spoken about in the context of especially cyber security, which is a field which is such, which is dynamic in every aspect. There are so many things changing real time. The threats are changing, the tactics, techniques, procedures are changing, the motives of the attacker are changing all the time. So it's very important to sort of play around with the technology or the tools to basically, in a safe environment, right? Of course, not in a production environment, in a safe environment, so that it gives you an understanding and a picture of the full landscape of from a learning perspective. So let me see if I can share the link. Hold on. So I've just put a link in the chat. So if you can access the chat, you should see a link in there. And that link basically contains all the resources for the three sessions, not only the session what you are listening to right now, but even the previous session as well as the final session, which is going to happen on Monday, right? So in that, you should see a section called as intrusion detection systems. So that is the one that I'm referring to. So if you access that, there is a PDF document when you click on, say, just in front of session 4 intrusion detection, you have overview of IDS, which is not, that is not the one we are looking at. Below that, there is session 1 intrusion detection overview of Surikata, right? So if you access that specific PDF document, you should have the slides. And again, before I sort of start with the content, uh, let me even put the exact link of the PDF so that all of you can follow that along. So this is the PDF content that I'm talking about. So before I sort of proceed further, huge props to APNIC as well, because I'm a community trainer for APNIC, as Abhishek mentioned. And usually these are 5-day workshops. So the content that you are looking at, the earlier link that I shared with you, that was a content for a 5-day workshop which I did in Bangladesh as APNIC community trainer. So this is a fully detailed hands-on workshop, and unfortunately, because of the amount of time that we have available, I'm sort of only covering little bits of those topics, but extremely important topics as well. So you at least get a feel and an understanding of what is it that you're supposed to learn, or the path that you should probably take, right? So feel free and explore the other presentations which are there on that link. They're all available as Creative Commons, so you can download them, you can access them, and then you can also access the Academy, APNIC Academy, which is available for free. So you can download, or rather log in at any point of time and do those exercises. And if you were part of the earlier session, then you would have realized that the exercises or the labs, the virtual labs, are all self-paced. So it's not just limited to the workshop only. You can access these at any point of time. You can save the session as I had demonstrated the last time around, and you can continue from where you left off. Of course, there is a 7-day period when you need to log in again. Otherwise, the session is basically deleted. In my opinion, that's an excellent way to sort of play around, because a lot of this content which is mentioned in the documents is contains malicious traffic, especially when you're talking about using Surikata to analyze malicious communication or a PCAP. You will see that these PCAPs contain malicious traffic or malicious binaries. So you need to be extremely careful when you're doing this. So the Academy platform provides an excellent opportunity to sort of do this in a safe manner. So talking about Surikata, so as I mentioned that Surikata is an IDS. So what is basically an IDS? An IDS is basically an intrusion detection system. And what does I talked about Zeek in session 1 when I mentioned that Zeek is not an IDS. Surikata is an IDS. Snot is an IDS. It basically is a software which will detect anything that matches a certain criteria, right? Now that certain criteria could be many things. It could be a simple IP address. Let's say you have a list of IP addresses which are bad, then you can put that entire list to Surikata and say that if you see any communication from these IP addresses, please alert or block that communication, right? So an IDS can also work as an IPS, intrusion prevention system. So Surikata can basically do both. It can do the functionality of an IDS as well as an IPS. And that's it depends. I mean, if you want to configure as an IPS, you can do that. Or if you only want to configure it as an IDS, you can also do that as well. And I mentioned an example of an IP address. It can match an IP address. It can match a domain name. It can match, say, for example, a hash of a file. Right? I'm sure when you learned about cryptography, hashing as a concept was also taught. If not, if you did not get an opportunity, you could probably explore looking for that information on the internet as well. In addition to that, you should also see cryptography is something that is covered part of the link that I have shared with you. So you can even access those resources and sort of explore learning those concepts as well. So it can do a lot of matching with respect to a lot of criterias, and it's basically an open source piece of software released under the GNU General Public License. So you can download it and basically look at the source code. It's not that old. It's not, as an IDS is a project which is, in my opinion, very old. It's still actively developed as well. Uh, which one is better? It depends. So I'm answering that question right now, because it will depend on what you are trying to do, as well as what sort of expertise you have. So I would suggest you play around with both Snot as well as Surikata. That will give you the comparison in a perspective. So the first release of Surikata was in 2009, and then the first standard release came out in July 2010. It has multiple features like multi-threading, automatic protocol detection, so it will detect the protocol. JSON standard output, so output can be stored in a JSON format, that is JavaScript object notation. It can do, as I said, file matching. It can do logging, extraction. So it can even extract content out of packets, right? Or it can even do MD5 checksum on the fly as well. Plus, it has something called as a DNS logger and many more features, right? So as I said, Surikata can do IDS. It can also do IPS as well. So in terms of configuring, so certain cases you would want to block the 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 rules that are matching as well. So say for example, general cases you can just alert, or if there is no alert, then you can, or if you don't want alerts, you want a defensive action, then you can configure Surikata to run as an IPS mode as well. And logs from Surikata can basically go in a seam. So seam is basically a centralized aggregation platform, right, where all the logs from multiple devices will come into the seam, and that's where the SOC, the Security Operations Center, will basically look at those logs and try to find out if there is any badness and if any action needs to be taken, right? This talks about installation of Surikata. I'll sort of skip this part, and you can explore this when you go inside the academy. So what I would urge all of you to do is to log in into academy.apnic.net and or access the link that is also shared in the slides, right? The slide link that I talked about, the lab overview. So there is a link there. So you access that and you sort of follow along the the instructions which are given inside the PDF document. So you can just copy and paste the content in there, right? And that will sort of give you a hands-on feel of doing these or using Surikata or analyzing a PCAP using Surikata, right? So in the meantime, what I'll do is I'll try and see if I can connect my laptop to a decent source of internet connection, and possibly share my screen and then run through the examples. But having said that, you should be able to follow along in the meantime. And if you have any questions, you can possibly put those questions in the chat as well. So I will sort of mute myself and try to see if I can connect to a decent source of internet.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Swapneel will shortly be rejoining us. He's looking for a better bandwidth connectivity source. So please bear with us for a few minutes. Swapneel, can you hear me? Good afternoon. Swapneel is trying to rejoin from a different source. Please give us a few moments. Good afternoon, everyone. Swapneel has asked all of you to please log into the APNIC Academy using the ID that you had created using your preferably your Gmail address and to look at the functionalities of Suricata. I repeat, Swapneel has requested that all of you please log into the APNIC Academy website and study the different functionalities of Suricata, which he just spoke about. Thank you.